Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. A degree can be the key to economic mobility for low and middle income families, but years of systemic discrimination has made it harder for Black and Latino students to afford tuition, which is why 90% of Black and 72% of Latino students take out student loans. For a whole host of reasons, these communities struggle to repay, with Black borrowers being 5 times more likely to default than white borrowers. All students, including Black and Latino, could realize the full benefits of a degree if we eliminate cost barriers for all of those who want to go to trade school or college. But to fully address those disparities, Congress should take steps to ensure that post-secondary programs don't leave students in a worse economic position. Dr. Cellini, I was moved by the testimony that you submitted, including in the need for accountability, where you focus on for-profit colleges, in particular for-profit schools. For-profit schools are notorious for abusing taxpayer funds and peddling ineffective degree programs. We can learn a lot about a program's effectiveness by looking at default rates for socially disadvantaged students. So how likely is a Black or Latino student to default at a 4-year for-profit college?
Well, some of the best data on default rates by race and institution type is done by Judy Scott Clayton, and she looks at data on student default over 12 to 20 years, so long-term patterns that other data can't get at. And she finds that about 58% of Black students who ever attended a for-profit college defaulted on their loans within 12 years. And then that number was 41% of Hispanic students were defaulting on their loans within 12 years.
Now, we have to compare those default rates to default rates for Black and Latino students who have never attended a for-profit and how they fare at other 4-year colleges. So do you know what those rates are?
Yeah, from her paper, what I'm remembering is that the rate for Black students in the never for-profit category who had not attended them, that rate was cut about in half, about 28%. And for Hispanic students, that went way down to about 11%, about a quarter.
That is really remarkable data, and it's deeply concerning that there's a real risk for Black and Latino borrowers at for-profit colleges to default more than any other sector. I also find it alarming considering that for-profit colleges enroll nearly twice as many Black students as public colleges, and a disproportionate share of Latino students, despite being more likely to have them default. Why are students of color overrepresented at for-profit colleges?
Well, one big reason is that for-profits can spend a lot of money on advertising and recruiting. They spend about $400 per student on advertising compared to about $14 per student in the public sector. And this doesn't even include a lot of social media advertising and internet advertising. I also have some research with Latika Chaudhry that shows that for-profits disproportionately tend to spend this advertising money in local areas with higher shares of Black and Hispanic students. There's less data on recruiting numbers, but some evidence suggests that for-profits may spend around $4,000 per student on them. We also know that these institutions tend to locate in higher poverty areas where students are more eligible for aid.
So for-profit colleges are aggressively marketing specifically to low-income Black and Latino students, and on average, for-profits spend $400 per student on commercials compared to public colleges spending just $14 per student. And you mentioned about aggressively recruiting and there being less data, but there is some data to suggest that they're aggressively recruiting these low-income students as well. For-profits are clearly aware that their programs fail low-income Black and Latino students, but they're aggressively marketing to them because they want the federal student aid dollars, which is really disturbing. And I'm glad that the Department of Education finalized the gainful employment rule to ensure that students are better off than having a high school diploma. But what can Congress do to better protect students from predatory recruitment and economic devastation?
Well, one thing that I think Congress could do is to really require disclosure of things like advertising, recruiting, marketing, and lobbying expenditures of institutions, and make that separate from student services in data sources like the iPads so that we can actually take a look at what colleges are spending. They might also consider restrictions on the use of Title IV funds for those types of activities. But really, I think the new GE proposal is incredibly important, and I would also think about, if Congress is thinking about expanding the Pell Grant program, to really make sure that that's not extended to very low-value short-term programs, potentially in the for-profit sector, so to be careful of the risk.
Thank you so much. I think it's important to protect students and taxpayers. And Madam Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this article called "The Biden Administration Wipes Out $130 Million of Debt for Students Misled by Colorado Career College." I think this is really important in terms of where students are and how we repair some of the damage that's been done.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.